You know what's good? Shrek 1. Yeah, I love Shrek. But you know what else is good? Grenzo. Yeah, look at that artwork too, that's sick. But you know what's better than Grenzo? It's Shrek 1. Yeah, it's always gonna be Shrek 1. I love Shrek. I should make a video about Shrek. Anyway, you know what else is? It's Blackboard from Balatro. It's the Blackboard card, Joker card from Balatro. How many times, man? Anyway, this video is about Grenzo. No, but for real, I do actually love Grenzo, and I love this deck too. It fucking slaps. So if you're wondering from the title, the deck does in fact have 69 creatures, including the commander, but that does not mean I'm running 31 lands. I'll let you think about how that's possible, but more on that later. So, Grenzo, Dungeon Warden. For X, a black and a red, you get a Goblin Rogue 2/2 with X 1/1 counters. And tied to that X cost is his activated ability. You can pay 2, take the bottom card of your library, and chuck it in the graveyard. Grenzo will check the card, and if it's a creature with power less than or equal to Grenzo's, he'll just slap it straight on the battlefield. And since this is checking against his power, we need to pick a power level for Grenzo to stick with. For our build, it's going to be 3, a nice middle ground. It's not that uncommon to see people go for 2 power, and if you do choose to go with 2, there are still plenty of great options at 2 or less, like putting 62 Relentless Rats in your deck and calling it a day. But I feel more comfortable with 3, so we're going to stick with that. There are a few fringe players who choose to play Grenzo at 4 power, but quite frankly those people are goo goo gaga Looney Tunes people.
Oh fuck, I can't believe you've done this.
So, why play Grenzo? Why put him in the command zone to begin with? Well, first of all,
Goblin.
Why does everyone want the
Goblin?
Because it's a fucking
Goblin.
Are you fucking serious?
What are you gonna do with it?
Fucking nothing, but I'm gonna own a fucking
Goblin.
now, so that's the fucking shit. It's
So you've been waiting 10 hours for a
Goblin.
that says
Rogue.
Oh, I didn't even know it says
Rogue.
I just want fucking
Goblin.
so yeah.
Goblin.
What, am I going to play fucking elves? What drew me to Grenzo was that activated ability. You pay 2 and play a game of chance with black or red, like roulette.
Introducing Russian roulette.
Not that one, that's the wrong one, the normal one.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the cool kind.
Let's fucking bet on this.
I've tried a few times making a gambling deck, once with Vrondus as a dice rolling deck, but there isn't really enough support to make a full dice rolling deck, and once with Usefree as a coin flipping deck. And it does flip a lot of coins, but that deck is a bit more of a meme than anything serious. Hopefully one day I'll make a video on those decks, and you guys can see what I'm talking about. But this Grenzo deck, this deck is flipping cards. This deck is playing those percentages. This is a real gambler's deck, baby. Oh yeah, flip that card, baby. Show me creature.
Look, George, this is the way it goes. Sometimes you're flush and sometimes you're bust, and when you're up, it's never as good as it seems, and when you're down, you never think you're gonna be up again. But life goes on. Remember that.
So anyway, I wanted a goofy deck, something zany and a bit out there, and at the time River Song didn't exist, so there wasn't any other commander like Grenzo. He appealed to me because he was incredibly unique, and I wanted to be special and unique too.
Ooh, we have a special snowflake!
So I decided to build Grenzo. I made a list, put it together, sat my goth GF down and played a game with her. And then on turn like 5, I made an infinite amount of mana and I won the game. Yeah, Grenzo wants to go infinite so bad. Ever since that first build of the deck, I've been continuously taking cards out of it to try and move further and further away from infinite combos. And basically all that means is that I don't not win with infinite combos, the combos just get more complicated. So that gives other players more time to stop me from winning and try to win themselves. I've been trying to balance my own deck that only ever wins by random chance to make it win slow enough to not snatch the game up immediately, but fast enough to still be able to win. Now that's hard to do. So let me explain about how the deck goes infinite and which cards got taken out to slow that down. I'll start with one of the worst offenders, Workhorse. Workhorse is a creature that will give you 4 mana. So you get him out, and then get out a card like Epitaph Golem. You pay 2 into Epitaph Golem, put a card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. And then if you pay 2 into Grenzo, you can infinitely loop the Workhorse over and over. You just need one more card in the mix to make that a win. Any Zulaport Cutthroat or Blood Artist type effect will insta-win you the game at that point. Sub those two for a Heartstone to make the activated abilities cheaper and make infinite mana. With infinite mana, you can put every single creature in the deck on the field, and then put every non-creature card back into your library in any order you want. If that doesn't win the game, then I don't know what will. Ashnod's Altar will go infinite with a ham sandwich. You take 3 from the horse and then sack it to the altar for 2, and that makes 5 off of a loop that costs you 4. Cauldron of Eternity skips that and makes the loop cost 2 by putting the horse on the bottom of your library as soon as it dies. I won't go over everything that goes infinite, but you get it. It's worth noting here that almost everything I've already mentioned is an artifact. So Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder were cut to cut down on tutors and artifact recursion. Over time, all of these cards were cut to make the deck slower and slower. Eventually, I decided to cut Ashnod's Altar altogether, along with the last 3 cards that weren't creatures: Braid of Fire, Thran Turbine, and Teferi's Puzzle Box. The first 2 are both amazing ramp pieces in the deck, and I really wish they were creatures, but Teferi's Puzzle Box is in here to manipulate the bottom cards of our library, which is amazing, but our opponents certainly won't miss it since it forces them to wheel every single turn, and that can be very obnoxious. With those cards cut, the deck finally became absolutely creature maxed, giving us the best possible chance at hitting creatures off of Grenzo's ability. But we are still winning with infinites, it's just more complicated and slower. So let me lay out an example for you of how the deck goes infinite now. We got Grenzo, we got Hoverstone Pilgrim. With those 2, we can loop cards for 4 from our graveyard to the bottom of library to the battlefield. We have out a Carrion Feeder, that's a free sack outlet. We have a Beetleback Chief, he makes 2 1/1s when he enters, so that's 3 creatures for the price of 1 card. We also have out a Pitiless Plunderer, so when we sack those 3 to the Carrion Feeder, we get 3 treasures. Now at this stage we can't make infinite mana, and we can't win on the spot, but our opponents are hounding us because they can easily envision us doing that, so we're on the clock. One of them swings at us, it's gonna be lethal. We start flipping cards to see if we can snatch the win from the jaws of death. We flip, it's a land. We flip, it's an Iron Mere, that's no good. We flip, it's a Skeleton Crew. We're gonna make it. We sack the Beetleback and the 2 1/1s. That's 3 treasures. We activate Hoverstone Pilgrim, targeting the Beetleback. Someone sees the loop and puts a Swords on the stack, targeting Hoverstone, but it's too late. We activate Hoverstone again, putting his ability on the stack on top of the Swords. It resolves. That triggers the Skeleton Crew. Since the Beetleback left the graveyard when we tucked it under our library, we get a free 2/2 skeleton. The Swords is still on the stack. The attack is still coming at us. We activate Grenzo. That puts the Beetleback into our graveyard. Grenzo checks its power, sees that it's less than his, and he moves it from the graveyard to the battlefield, which again triggers the Skeleton Crew. That gives us another 2/2. That's 5 creatures. That's 5 treasures, and that's the loop. We net those 5 and we go infinite. With our infinite mana, we flip and flip until we hit a Fury Stroke Giant, which says our creatures can tap to damage players. And with our loop, we can also end up with infinite creatures, so that's infinite damage, but our creatures don't have haste. So we keep flipping until we hit a Chasm Guide, which has an ETB that grants all my creatures haste until the end of the turn. And I tap out infinite creatures to deal infinite damage to win the game. All of that with a Swords on the stack and a lethal attack coming at us. All of it at instant speed. Now the combo I just described to you requires 8 permanents in order to win, and that's a lot of permanents. There are less complex ways to win, with the least complicated lines requiring 5, but there's no redundancy for those pieces. And since the deck is extremely random, our opponents got to ask themselves, are they feeling lucky? How long can they let me live? And how threatening is our deck actually? Of course, I look at my game plan, and I can tell that I'm only as good as the next flip off the bottom of the deck, but our opponents have cards in their hands, and what's more, they intend to use them. The only thing I have is a potential flip. Most of the time, I treat my hand like it doesn't even exist, and with no cards in hand comes no game plan. It is a very regular occurrence that our opponents overestimate the threat level of what our deck is currently doing, and assess the deck for what it could be doing. So it's almost every game that the deck gets targeted down. It's for this reason that I've never once been able to win a game through combat damage, even when the deck was more focused around that and had more Lord and evasion effects in it. So anyway, it's not as though I become a target for playing overpowered and frustrating game pieces, just for combo potential. For what it's worth, the Salt summary score that this deck is assigned on Architect is 20.66. Now these scores aren't perfect, but my next lowest deck is a 29.12 and my highest is a 40.05, and it's pretty clear by that graph that 20.66 is really on the low end. For anyone who doesn't know, EDH Rec polls people to see how salty they are about particular cards in Magic and assigns them all a Salt score, and these numbers are reflective of those scores. With all the focus on us, you might think that the games would be a struggle, but the deck is surprisingly resilient. Goblin Chirurgian? Is a targeted regeneration guy that can make picking my board apart very difficult, and board wipes can be absolute blowouts, since I can flip into Prowling Geistcatcher and just tuck my whole board underneath it. Even if I don't protect my board though, board wipes are not a counter to this deck. The problem my opponents are facing is I can put way more cards on the table than them. If they wipe the board, as soon as Grenzo gets back, the cycle starts again, and they once again find that I can put way more cards on the table than them. Some of the secret sauce that makes that possible here is the ramp package. In total, of the 69 creatures I can flip into, 26 of them can ramp me, like Solemn Simulacrum and Scampering Surveyor that can both get me lands. Stadium Vendor's ETBs and immediately gives me 2 mana, so when I flip him, I get 1 free flip.
It's free real estate.
Ardent Electromancer is an even better version of this effect. She gives 1 mana per creature in our party, so since she's a wizard, that's automatically 1, but then since Grenzo is a
Goblin.
a
Rogue.
that's automatically 2, and then for the other 2, there are already 9 warriors, making it the second most popular creature type in the deck after goblins, since a bunch of the goblins just happen to be warriors already. And there is 1 cleric, so it is possible for the Electromancer to give us 4 mana when she enters, but I only included 1 cleric since 4 mana is way too close to going infinite. The 1 cleric we did include is Priest of the Forgotten Gods, which is a sack outlet, which we want, a removal piece, which is great, ramp, which is what we really want, and card draw. We mostly don't care about drawing cards in this deck, but we will always take the opportunity to get more lands. I'll briefly mention that removal is seriously neglected here. A few examples of the removal we are running would be Goblin Cratermaker that has pay 2 sack and destroy target colorless non-land permanent, and Outrage Shaman that enters and deals damage to a creature equal to our devotion to red. These cards aren't great, and there aren't very many of them, but our real game plan is not to disrupt, it's to win underneath what everyone else is doing. So anyway, back to the ramp. One of the most interesting ways to ramp here is Khan, Legacy Reforged. He's the only creature in the deck that can whiff off of Grenzo's ability, since his power is dependent on the mana values of artifacts we control. There are 6 cards that have mana value 4 or greater, like Solemn or Pentavus, which would make him whiff if they're already out. But our odds are pretty good here. If we have nothing but some treasures out and we hit him off Grenzo's ability, he puts him in the graveyard, checks his power, which will be 0 since it's just treasures, and then he slaps him on the board where Khan sees himself and gives himself power toughness of 5. And then on our upkeep, he'll start adding colorless for each artifact we control, with the restriction that we can't cast non-artifact spells, but we aren't casting anything. We just pump it into Grenzo's ability. One of my favorite cards in the deck is this guy, Herald of Leshreck. He has cumulative upkeep, gain control of a land you don't control, which is crazy. That means that the first upkeep after he enters, we steal a land off an opponent, and on the turn after that, we get 2 lands, and it just keeps going up from there. Here's a clause that says when he leaves the battlefield, they get their stuff back, which is almost a guarantee since we're stealing their lands, but that's fine. Even stealing 1 land for 1 turn is good enough for me. One thing to note here, since the upkeep trigger doesn't target our opponent's lands. They can't just tap down the land we decide to steal. The trigger goes on the stack. They have the opportunity to tap down any lands they see fit, but they don't get to know at that moment which ones we will steal. So their only real counter action here is to tap all of their lands in response. But if they leave anything up, we can just grab it as the trigger resolves and then tap it whenever we see fit. I fucking love this card, man. You should see the way I look at this card.
Are you alright, bro? What the f is that?
Also, Leshreck is worth 7 mana, and that ability is not worth paying 7 mana for. But if you paid 2 mana for it, well, now it's definitely worth it. What's more though is that we didn't just pay 2 to play Leshreck. We essentially paid 2 mana to both draw him and cast him, which is incredible value. But some of you may have noticed we didn't actually draw the card, and we didn't actually cast the card, which is another reason why this deck is so resilient. Since we didn't draw it, we're not getting taxed by anything like Smothering Tithe, and since we didn't cast anything, we aren't taxed by Esper Sentinel or Rhystic Study, and we can't be counterspelled either, which I fucking love. We really aren't playing a normal game of Magic with this deck. We just play some weird, slow game of Solitaire around what our opponents are doing, but much like Solitaire, we need to ensure that we're getting what we need. And since we aren't interested in card draw, how are we going to do that?
Hi everyone, Master Psychic Lady was the prophet of the Christ again with Christian gifted psychics and holy witches. I'm having some problems with recording. I don't know what's going on with these videos, but I was trying to record the video that was about scrying with a bowl, but the video got cut off. I don't know why.
Scrying. The answer is we're going to learn how to scry. Scrying in black and red can be a bit of a challenge, but with cards like Vizier, Seer and Woe Strider, we can sack creatures to scry. Plus Phyrexian Vivisector, Nefarious Imp and Wart-Eye Witch all scry when a creature dies. The Imp even scries when we sack a treasure. The reason why scrying is so good in this deck is because it can select lands for us, since the only thing we ever want to draw are lands. And if it's a creature and we scry it, we can whack it on the bottom, which serves double duty here, not only bringing us closer to our next land draw, but also guaranteeing a hit for Grenzo. So the value we get off scrying here is insane. It's so good that we're running this Walrus, a mana dork that only has an ETB Scry 2 trigger, and 4 lands that have scry triggers as well. We're also running Raucous Theater, a Surveil land. Now the consensus is Surveil is way better than scry, but not in this deck. Chucking stuff in the bin is way worse for us than on the bottom of the library. But it's not useless, and it does help us select for lands, so that's why it's here. So now that I'm talking about lands, let me tell you how many lands we're running. Like I said earlier, it's not 31, but we do have 69 creatures, so what's with that? Some of you may have figured this out already, but we can do this because we're running creatures that are lands. When I first saw Boggart Trawler, I was maybe a little underwhelmed. I liked the design, I thought it was costed appropriately. Cool, it's a land on the back. I kind of figured it could replace Bojuka Bog in some of my decks and that would be fine, but I just left it for a while. I just said, I'll look at it later. And I did, maybe a few months later. But I took another look at the card, and I thought, Boggart Trawler. 3/1 for 3, not bad, not good. Goblin, oh, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, he can go in my Goblin deck. Oh, that's random. What would I take out of the deck, though? Wait a second. I can take out a land and put in a creature. And if it's in my hand, it's a land. And if I flip it off the bottom, it's a creature. Oh my god! What the fuck? So, I went looking for MDFCs that were also creatures, and I found that there was one other that was released in Modern Horizons 3, and 2 that had been out since Zendikar that were in black and red. One of them is Pinnacle Monk. He has an ETB to return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand, and you might be thinking, surely we aren't running any instants and sorceries? Round. But MDFC is coming clutch here once again with Valakat Awakening. In instant, they can put cards from our hand on the bottom of our library in any order of our choosing, and then refill our hand. We get so much value out of this that I almost never play this as a land, since it will get us more lands to play for the turn. The other 2 MDFC creatures are Blackborn Rogue, a very useless human rogue with no synergy, and a Coom Warrior, which unfortunately has a power of 4. and since we're running Grenzo at 3, we can't shove them in the deck. But hopefully, with the release of Modern Horizons 4, they'll print 20 more black-red creature land MDFCs with power 3 or less, and we can really creature max this deck. Now when I found these creature lands, I was running 35 lands and 65 creatures, which since I could only sub in 3 creature lands, that would raise my total up to 68. So I said,
Fuck all that.
and I did what any smart deck builder would do, and I cut a land, bringing our grand totals up to 34 lands and 69 creatures. And yeah, 34 lands is very thin, but for the most part, if we can hit 3 lands and cast our commander, we will be absolutely sorted and we'll start ramping and scrying, and our deck will function beautifully. Architect tells me that by turn 3, I have a 74% chance of drawing 3 lands, and I have no idea how to account for mulligans there, but I'm pretty sure that the number goes up, so that's great. So what else is in our 34 lands? Well, if it's not scrying us, and it's not an MDFC, it's most likely a dual land. We really want to cast our commander on turn 3, which means not just having 3 lands, but also having access to both black and red. And we do have a fair amount of colorless utility lands in here, so to squeeze as many duals into the deck as possible, we have cards like Auntie's Hovel, a reveal land that cares about goblins in our hand. And since this deck is a goblin deck, and we don't care about casting the goblins in our hand, it's almost always going to enter untapped. We also have Plaza of Heroes that's dual when we're casting our commander, and afterwards can be colorless and we don't care at all. Same with Great Hall of the Citadel. We can pay colorless to get 1 black and 1 red to cast our commander. Similar but less intuitive, we have Guildmage's Forum and Opal Palace. In a scenario where we end up with 1 colored land, say a swamp, and 2 colorless lands, in fact let's just use these 2 as the example, we can tap 1 for colorless to pay for the other's ability to add red, and give our commander a 1/1 counter, meaning we can use the black and the red we have to cast Grenzo, where X is 0, and we still end up getting a power 3 Grenzo, and that makes the deck functional. Pretty high tech, huh? The last few lands I'll mention are Myriad Landscape and it's back, Temple of the False Gods. Yeah, that's right. You're never gonna convince me to not run Temple. Even in this deck, my deck with the least amount of lands. I love Temple. It's literally going to be in every single video I make. So we talked about ramp and we've talked about lands. And I briefly mentioned Epitaph Golem and Hoverstone Pilgrim, but what I haven't mentioned are the other cards with this effect. When I first built the deck, Epitaph Golem was the only card with this pay 2 ability specifically. There was Junk Trawler and Radio Sentinel that were close but not the same, but since then Wizards have printed Hoverstone Pilgrim in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Tomb Trawler in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Barkform Harvester in Bloomburrow, and Malevolent Chandelier that we can't run because it's power 4 from Duskmourn. I don't know why Wizards keeps making these, but I feel like someone who works there must be a massive Grenzo fan or something. The one they printed from Bloomburrow, Barkform Harvester, is a changeling too, so it even counts as a goblin. And I guess I briefly mentioned this earlier, but I haven't really said, this is a goblin deck. And you know what they say about goblins? Goblins are like onions. Or maybe cake? I don't know. Anyway, let's see some goblins. Our first goblin be like,
I am just a goblin, ma'am.
It's Mad Auntie. This lady can tap to regenerate stuff, adding a little more resilience to the deck. Our next goblin is Sting Scourger. I bet Sting Scourger be like,
I am a goblin and I can only eat cabbage.
So true. Yeah, I got all these clips of Barney saying goblin, and I want to use them, so yeah, get used to it, alright?
Listen, it's every goblin for himself out here.
Like that one. Sting Scourger is a goblin, and he has an ETB bounce effect, which is extremely unique for a mono red goblin. He also has this echo cost, so if we don't pay 4 on the next upkeep, we have to sack him, but we really don't care that much.
Listen, it's every goblin.
Oh, sorry, I already used that one. Let's try this one.
Unfortunately, I am an idiot goblin who does not understand how to get milk or even where to get bucket.
Does that work? Fucking, I don't care. Moving on. Next, it's Mog Maniac. This guy's so insane that he won't stop mogging people, which is sick. Sick. When he's dealt damage, he can redirect it to someone's face, which is the same effect as Brash Top. Oh, shit. Oh my god. Oh, that secret lair is fucked. Ugh. Why did they make that? I bet if someone saw this guy in real life, they'd be like,
no goblins allowed.
Yeah, that joke is... that is not funny.
The admiration I had for your work has completely evaporated.
Anyway, Grishnak Brash Instigator has a pretty weird ability. He ETBs and you amass orcs too. So you make a 2/2 orc army. And when you make the army, you get to steal a non-legendary creature with power less than the orc. You untap it and it gains haste. Now where this gets really good is if you can recur Grishnak, which we can definitely do. When he comes back, you make the orc 2 bigger than it was. So now you can steal something that's 4 or less. And then if you do it again, you steal something that's 6 or less. And it just keeps going in this complicated way to steal all of your opponent's shit. And with a free sack outlet, which we do have in the deck, we actually have like 9 in here or something, we can just sack them all before giving them back. The best part about Grishnak is he's not an orc. He's a goblin.
There's your problem, he said. You're a goblin. And then he jumped down a hole.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. You know what?
Shut the fuck up. This is my video. Go make your own goblin video.
That one works. That was a good one. I'm proud of that one. Yeah, that's all my Barney clips. When is Goblin Man episode 3, Barney? Huh? When's the next WoW vid, Barney? They'll probably come out while I'm editing this. All up, we have 34 goblins in the deck. The rest of them do random things like ramping or destroying artifacts. A couple I'll mention are Munitions Expert and Mog War Marshal. And I only wanted to bring this up because I actually have signed artists' proofs of these cards. That's it, they do good things. Like Munitions Expert has an ETB that deals damage to creatures equal to the number of goblins I control, which can be a lot. And Mog War Marshal has when he enters and when he dies, he makes a 1/1 goblin. So he's 3 goblins for 1 card. If we talk about that in the context of the infinite combos we were discussing before, 3 goblins into Skirk Prospector will get 3 mana, which won't loop without more cards around. And there are a couple of other creatures that are 3 for 1s as well. Then there is one 4 for 1 in Siege Gang Commander, whose ETB makes 3 1/1s. So this can loop infinitely with Skirk Prospector, but you don't get infinite mana, just ETBs and deaths. So you already need something else again to convert that into damage, and the win. The be-all end-all of our combos in this deck is Goblin Marshal. Goblin Marshal has, when he enters and when he dies, make 2 1/1 goblins. So he's a total of 5 goblins for 1 card. I had no idea he existed until I went through a Scryfall search for every goblin that has power 3 or less and is black or red that isn't a reprint. At the moment, there are 388 of them. Sometime last year I read through every single one of them and it was worth it because I found Goblin Marshal. In an absolute perfect world, I would put out Grenzo, Hoverstone Pilgrim, Goblin Marshal, and Skirk Prospector, with these 2 cards having no redundancy in the deck at all, and if I flip out of 99 cards and I get exactly both of them, then I'll get infinite mana, get something else out like Murderous Redcap, and end the game. But I will say that of all the games I've played with this deck in its current state, I have never once had that happen. I have not won a game like that yet. It will happen one day, but most of the combo wins I get are a lot jankier than that. So, for the rest of the deck,
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
Yep, that's it. The deck's over. There are a lot of cards I'm not mentioning since this video is already so long. If you want to see them all, the full deck list is in the description. But yeah, that's the whole deck. Unsubscribe from the channel. I just got to 50 subs and I'm trying to see that number go down. Can we do it? Can we hit 0, guys? I believe in you. Check out Rubbed Genie. He makes the backgrounds that I use and he is chill. Bro is chill. The URL's in the description, but if you want a clickable link, it's in the About section on my channel. I don't know, there's some YouTube restriction with small channels and clickable links, but check out his page, it's got mad shit. And that is really everything. Thank you for watching my Shrek video, and if you watch this whole video, you are my actual boyfriend now.